This episode of Mini Tech Scroll is brought to you by Blackbird, a venture capital firm investing in Aussie and Kiwi startups from the very beginning. Through microgrants programs like ProtoStars, the Blackbird Foundation offers support to young people working on passion projects, like Nikol Moses, who Lauren chats to at the end of today's episode. So if you're working on something you want to take to the next level, ProtoStars could be for you. Successful applicants are awarded 1,000 AUD and get to join an 8-week-long cohort with other founders and creators. Applications are currently open and close on September 14th. So if you're looking for funding, community, and support, check out the link to apply in our show notes. Hey everyone, and welcome to Mini Scroll, the daily internet culture podcast bringing you the biggest stories from social media, the creator economy, and the digital space every Monday through Thursday and sometimes Fridays. My name is Annabelle, and I'm your Wednesday Mini Tech Scroll host, and also the deputy editor of the youth digital media brand Centennial World. Welcome back to Mini Tech Scroll. As you have probably gathered, today we have another interview with Lauren at the end of this episode, so definitely stick around for that. Before we get into the stories this week, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Anything you do is helpful. We also have a Buy Me a Coffee link in our description if you want to check that out. Okay, let's get to the stories. And for this week, I only have 2 stories before the interview because one of them is a very big one. But yes, let's just get into it. So recent reporting has found that a dark money group is funding influencers to push out a specific political agenda in the United States. This story was absolutely everywhere last weekend. It does veer a little bit more political rather than tech, but I'm sure you guys have picked up on this by this point, but the crossover between internet culture, tech, and politics is literally what I find most interesting. My international relations and American studies degree is showing. But since this story is quite comprehensive and has caused a lot of chatter online, how I'm going to do this is I'm first going to give a high-level explanation of the piece that started all of the conversation, then talk about the reaction to it, and then end off with some thoughts about what this all means. To start off, let's define the term dark money. It's usually a term to refer to money spent on elections or politics that comes from sources that cannot be identified. There are quite a few issues with dark money because it undermines transparency and makes it more difficult to identify what has been swayed by special interests or lobby groups, etc. So the reporter that brought this story to light was Taylor Lorenz, and the piece was published in Wired. In broad strokes, her piece finds that over 90 influencers were set to take part in a program that was aiming to allegedly push out democratic messaging online. The contract was reportedly by Chorus, which is, quote, a creator-led nonprofit organization dedicated to helping content creators expand their reach and educate their audiences about news and public policy issues that impact their lives. And that was according to the Chorus website. So the so-called Chorus Creator Incubator Program was funded by the 1630 Fund, which is a lobbying/advocacy group that is quite influential when it comes to funding in left-wing spaces in the United States. There were specific requirements and rules to be a part of the program. I'm going to be careful here and quote heavily from the article just to avoid spreading misinformation or misconstrue the article itself. Anyway, so I'll relay a couple of the restrictions pulling from Lorenz's reporting directly. As she writes, quote, the contract mandated extensive secrecy about disclosing their payments and had restrictions on what sort of political content the creators could produce. For context, these creators were reportedly being paid around $8,000 a month. As Lorenz continues, quote, according to copies of the contract viewed by Wired that creators signed, the influencers are not allowed to disclose their relationship with Chorus or the 1630 Fund, or functionally that they're being paid at all. And another interesting point that I wanted to note was, quote, creators also have to loop Chorus in on any independently organized engagements with government officials or political leaders. So you can see from that there were quite a few restrictions in place. And even though there were reportedly concerns from the creators, many of them did end up joining the program. Lorenz speaks about how some of the creators had discussed their concerns in a separate group chat. As she explains, quote, the influencers offered the funding were given just days to sign the contract, which was essentially presented on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. In the group chat formed to discuss the contract negotiations, some creators discussed a clause prohibiting the disparagement of other creators. Not being able to criticize anyone else affiliated with Chorus felt restricted to some, according to text messages posted to the chat. For all the details, I would strongly recommend that you go and read the piece in full. It is linked in the description. I would also recommend that you read this piece as opposed to watching TikTok TikTok summaries of it because there has been quite a lot of misinformation circulating around the piece. But at the end of the day, it's safe to say that dark money creeping into the creator economy raises serious ethical concerns, especially around transparency and disclosure, which is something that we should be expecting from creators, particularly around the fact that these creators were reportedly not allowed to disclose that they were receiving payments. For context, we also did reach out to Taylor Lorenz for comment before reporting on this story, and she attributed much of the misinformation floating around the online world to a misunderstanding about disclosure. As she wrote to us in response, quote, "I think a lot of these creators are intentionally lying about my story in order to distract from the facts of our reporting. One thing I've seen is people misunderstanding disclosure. Disclosure about funding is so important for transparency in our political system. Whether on the right or the left, when a political group is paying, you need to disclose." So there are obviously so many points to discuss here, but before we get into the broader implications, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into how people online have reacted to the article for a little bit more context for you guys. So many creators that were named in the article and that were reportedly part of the program have kind of doubled down on the fact that they haven't hidden their association with Chorus and that Chorus or the 1630 Fund does not control what they say. But the key point here is that while many are clearly associated with Chorus in one way or another, some have appeared on the website, the problem is that the funding structure wasn't as clearly disclosed. On top of this, after the piece was published, Lorenz has had many accusations leveled against her. Social media users have alleged that she has accepted dark money herself and claim that she is even working for the Republican Party, both claims that she has denied herself both on social media and to Centennial World directly. In a statement to Centennial World, she said, quote, "Obviously this is completely and utterly false, and I think you guys platforming these sorts of conspiracy theories in any way aside from fully debunking them is harmful. I would absolutely never accept dark money because I'm completely opposed to it, and I report on dark money in politics." I will also include a clip here from Taylor Lorenz's TikTok responding to the theories and allegations against her directly.
"Anyone claiming that I or the reporting fellowship that I'm in is currently receiving dark money is lying through their teeth. I'm currently in the Omidyar Network's Reporters in Residence program. It's a nonpartisan, non-political journalism program to support independent journalists. A bunch of cloud-chasing influencers on here have gotten and completely lied and said that the Reporters in Residence program at Omidyar is also funded by the 1630 Fund. This could not be further from the truth. It is just a bold-faced lie. And now the Omidyar Network has actually came out and put out a statement making it clear that this is completely false.
There has also been a lot of claims that she was lying or that her reporting was inaccurate. Given the legal review a piece like this would have to undergo at Wired, it does seem unlikely that her reporting would have been fabricated in any way, especially when we consider the heat that this piece has received. I do find these allegations quite interesting because I think it kind of shows how distrustful people are of the media these days, and people don't really realize how many months of research and fact-checking would go into an article like this. Now that we've covered what the article says and kind of what the response has been to the piece, I wanted to take a bigger picture look at this story as a whole. First, I think the connection between dark money and the creator economy is telling from a new media angle. There was obviously a lot of talk last year about how the 2024 presidential election was the quote-unquote podcast election. Trump notably attempted to quote-unquote court the manosphere and lean into the alt-right online through these podcasts. And to many, it did pay off since he won the election. Having said that, though, it's safe to say that Republicans and the more conservative side of politics have been leaning into new media and influencers longer and arguably more effective than the progressive side of politics has. This is something that Lorenz also points to in her piece, but I do think the question here is that if one side of the political spectrum is doing it, in this case, maybe working with influencers and refusing to disclose it, is this something the other side should also do, even if it might be unethical? I'm definitely curious to hear what you guys think about this. I feel like I veer to the negative on that. Call me naive and optimistic, because I do know a lot of people I think would disagree with me on that. There are clearly just so many transparency issues here, and while I was preparing for this episode, I did read an article from the Washington Post that kind of went into this a little bit. So I thought I would just read a quote from that to give you some more context. Quote, "It's hard to track exactly how much campaigns and super PACs are spending on creating creators because they often distribute funds to large agencies that work with the creators, or they funnel payment through contractors that are not visible in federal election filings. Obviously, this is all very American. It's all about the US context. And I think another valuable question to ask, because we are obviously based in Australia, is whether dark money being funneled into the creator economy is something unique to the United States. I have a couple of points to make here. The first question to consider, I think, is whether dark money is unique to the United States. And the answer is no, but it is especially pervasive there because of the way elections are financed. The 2010 Citizens United case, along with various related rulings, loosened restrictions on political spending and ended up kind of creating loopholes in campaign disclosure rules, which I think really ramped up and kind of led to the normalization of dark money in US elections and politics. On top of this, there is just so much money being poured into campaigns. If we're looking at legislators as an example, in the US, legislators are largely responsible for their own campaign and fundraising, with only some discreet help provided by the party. It's a huge difference to campaigning here in Australia, which is more centrally run. That is not to say, though, that dark money isn't a thing in other places around the world. According to a 2025 report from The Guardian, almost $70 million of dark money flowed to the major parties in Australia along with the Greens last year. The next point I think is worth mentioning is how polarization may feed into this. I do think there is something to be said about how polarization may cause dark money and pay-to-play politics to kind of ramp up in some senses. The US is obviously extremely polarized. We have been talking about this for years, but this would fuel the fire in some sense, where dark money ramps up as each side kind of tries to outspend each other. It's basically political and financial tit for tat at this point. In our correspondence with Taylor, we also asked if she thinks dark money is becoming more prominent in political strategy. She said, quote, "Dark money is playing a bigger role in the US political system, and while Democrats previously railed against it, now they're embracing it and advocating for less transparency in our political media landscape. I think it's a dangerous game, and one that won't end up with the result they think." Having said all that, Australia does tend to follow cues from the United States, whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. And we can see for a fact that places like Australia are leaning more and more into influences for election cycles. The last election here was actually a case in point. There was even a scandal where one independent representative came under fire after collaborating with a mental health advocate and content creator, but those collaborations were allegedly not marked as paid. This only seems like a couple steps before something like what Lorenz reported on happening to me. There's also been commentary from influential media figures like Hannah Ferguson here in Australia, who runs Cheek Media, who noted in a speech at one point that, quote, "There's a lot of people who were accepting money and doing authorizations on social media posts, and that did concern me greatly." And she was referring to our last election. So I would be curious to hear from you guys, especially if you live outside the US or Australia, whether this is something you see happening in your political context. But at the end of the day, though, I think whether we're talking about the US, Australia, or anywhere else, the big question, I think, is if influencers are already a powerful or increasingly influential part of politics, we should push for and expect transparency so audiences know when money is behind a certain message. I think it's a standard we kind of expect from businesses and journalists, and if creators are kind of stepping into the space, or at least trying to, they probably need to meet the same ethical bar. But that was a lot. I am eager to hear your thoughts on anything and everything I just mentioned. So yes, leave us thoughts in the comments, and thank you to Taylor Lorenz for responding to our request. After that story, I wanted to discuss something perhaps a little less intense and convoluted to maybe balance out this episode a little bit. That is why we need to talk about how Shein has recently been criticized for seemingly using Luigi Mangioni's likeness to promote a product. That is absolutely an insane headline, and I'm sorry. The product in question is a shirt, and it's seemingly available on the US Shein store. The shirt, for your knowledge, is called, quote, "Men's new spring/summer short sleeve blue ditzy floral white shirt pastoral style gentleman's shirt for everyday wear, family matching mummy and me." Please, What are we doing with names this long? That is literally insane. Anyway, the picture on the website shows a man modeling the shirt who looks an awful lot like Luigi Mangione. I will also insert a picture on the screen. I first came across this story on X, where people were debating the ethics of doing something like this, but it seems that TMZ was the first outlet to formally report it. Pupcrave did post about it. That's how we all get our news these days. And the replies were overwhelmingly negative, with people calling the move, quote, disrespectful, quote, interesting, and even some speculating how it could be some sort of marketing gimmick. Now, obviously, we know this is not actually Luigi in the photo because he is in custody, but this instance raises a bigger question about how digital-first retailers like Shein can use AI-generated models, manipulate stock photos, or even just use faces that resemble real people, sometimes a little too closely, to sell products. And that I think opens up a whole new conversation beyond the ethics of using Luigi Mangione as the model. Because if a brand accidentally or intentionally uses the likeness of a public figure without their consent, there can be some very real consequences for their career. Imagine if a celebrity woke up to find their face on a Shein ad. Like, even if they had nothing to do with it, another brand, maybe considering a partnership with them, might see that image and not want that association. Or a fan might see a picture of them on the Shein website and decide not to support them anymore. There are so many different possibilities, but it could genuinely harm someone's career or reputation, all because of a, low effort, possibly AI generated marketing tactic. So while the Luigi Mangione story might seem like a weird one-off, I actually think it points to a much bigger problem with how digital retailers like Shein are maybe sourcing images, how AI also might be blurring the lines between likeness and reality, and at the end of the day, how little control we might actually have over how our image is used online, which I feel like is something a lot of us may have already come to the conclusion of, but it doesn't make it any less dystopian and unsettling. I love delivering the positive news on Mini Tech Scroll. Now, finally, we have Lauren's interview thanks to Blackbird with Nikol Moses, who is the founder of Friends on Purpose and also the co-founder of Ripple Social. So yes, let's just cut to that now.
Hi, everyone. It's me. So as you know, for the next couple of months, I'm bringing you interviews with other founders at the end of a few of the Mini Tech episodes as part of our Blackbird sponsorship. So today, I am bringing you guys a chat with Nikol Moses, founder of the community network Friends on Purpose and co-founder of Ripple, an app for finding IRL social opportunities. In this interview, we chat about Nikol's experience building both businesses, what she thinks Gen Z really needs from social media platforms, and what drives her entrepreneurial spirit. Reminder, click the link in the description if you have an idea and you want to take it to the next level with the help of Blackbird. Welcome, Nikol. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to chat with you about everything that you're doing. You're doing two kind of separate projects that fuse into one, it sounds like. So can you tell us a little bit for our listeners about what you're building, the inspiration behind why you started what you started, and kind of how it's evolved?
Yeah, so it all started with Friends on Purpose, which is a women's community that runs in-person events to help women meet new friends. And we run that in 5 cities across Australia. And we've had about 25,000 people come through our events. And then recently, since the start of the year, I started building a social app called Ripple, which is basically just to help people find in-person social occurrences, whether it be large events or more casual things like I'm looking for someone to have lunch with on Tuesday, or like a small group hike.
Oh, that's cute. I love that. Okay, so what was your inspiration behind Friends on Purpose?
I think ever since I was very young, I have been very community and friends oriented. I didn't have that many friends in high school. So when I got out of high school and I started putting myself out there, going to uni and other things, I made a really close group of friends and I was having a good time. And then for some unknown reason, I literally couldn't tell you why, I decided to move to Brisbane. And I didn't know anyone there. I was moving because I got a job there and I could do uni remotely. So I was like, okay, why not? And I thought it would be completely fine I'll just make friends through work, through my various hobbies. But it just didn't happen that way. It was just very difficult. And I tried all the existing solutions like apps and Facebook groups, but I just wasn't really, it just wasn't really happening. And so I made a TikTok video, which was a friend application video. It was trending at the time. And I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people respond to me saying, I'm in the same situation. I live right next to you. Let's hang out. There were so many people that I didn't think I could meet all of them one-on-one. So I was like, screw it. Let's have an event.
So it started from a TikTok video. How did you connect people then? Was it like a website? Was it a social group?
I think I started off by just getting people to fill out a type form about what they wanted, like what kind of event they wanted and when it would be. And then once people got back to me, I think I just put it up on Eventbrite or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. So that's like so grassroots. That's so cool.
Yeah. It was really fun. I'm still good friends with the people that I met at that very first event.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. Okay. So then obviously you saw a bit of demand, a bit of a niche there that you'd carved out for yourself as kind of like a community builder, a connector. Is that what inspired then Ripple?
Yeah, I think what inspired Ripple is that I think that I and so many others found magic in Friends on Purpose, the magic of in-person connection. But I also think that there's limitations to Friends on Purpose, the fact that it's centralized around like me and the other girls that host it. And the fact that it's limited to women, although I do genuinely love women's
Yeah.
groups. And also the fact that there was a huge emphasis on the initial introduction of you to another person, but not that much for the follow-on. But I basically wanted to take like what we found at Friends on Purpose and just have a bigger impact with it. And fix a handful of the problems that I just mentioned. And that is what birthed Ripple. You know, the general thesis of it for me is that I think they're like the social platforms that we use in this day and age were not built for this era. They were built for 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. And none of them really capture the essence of how this generation wants to connect, which in my experience, is low friction, low pressure, repeatable, and in person. So that is what Ripple is. That's the mission of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so tell me about how you brought the platform or the app to life. Like, is it just you? Do you have a team? How do you bring something like this to fruition?
So I had a friend who I met my first week in Sydney, and we had always spoken about wanting to do something like this. And then 6 months into us knowing each other, he quit his job just to like explore options. And then he came to me and said, I actually want to do something seriously. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And we didn't actually know exactly what that would look like, but we just spent like a month or two like figuring out what it would be. And then we just started building it. He's a software engineer, so he took care of all the tech side. And then 3 months before we launched, I just started running events, building up the social media, the community, and then we launched.
What has been the most challenging part of the process so far? You know, when you first started your entrepreneurial journey, which was, you know, with Friends on Purpose, like what do you think has been the hardest or the most challenging part?
Ooh, to only pick one.
You can pick multiple.
I mean, one thing that I've gotten used to, I don't know if people should get used to this, but deadlines will always come and go. Like, it doesn't matter how much you plan for a deadline, things can and they will come up beforehand. I don't think that Friends on Purpose is a little bit different because it was very like linear.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
very simple, but in terms of like developing an app and having like multiple people to deal with, there's just so many factors to consider. And I think of all the deadlines we've had, we've probably hit 20% of them on time.
Yeah.
Because they're just like things are always delayed. And also that you don't know what you don't know. Even if you feel like you know everything, until you actually start doing it, you will never know the amount of absolutely random things that will pop up that you think might be easy to work through. But then it's like, oh no, this is going to take me 2 weeks.
I'm interested to hear your opinion. This is a bit of a pivot
Mm.
on the discourse around third spaces, because obviously that's a huge conversation, especially on TikTok, about young people and how there's kind of a missing third space for young people. And a lot of, I think, young founders are trying to enter into this like IRL experience space and build that for their own generation and community. What's your take on that?
By definition, we have more third spaces now than we ever had.
Mm.
What is a third space? It's a cafe, it's a library, it's a co-working space, it's a gym. It's anything that isn't work or home. And I think we probably have more of them now than we ever have. I would say that the main problem these days is people's deteriorating social skills and how it is not enough to just bring people in the same physical space together. You need to give them social context.
Mm.
Either that they are all there because they like the same thing or because they're doing the same thing. Maybe they know the same people. I think that the main problem these days with why in-person meeting is very difficult is just the amount of friction that is involved in setting it up and the fact that there are so many easy but surface level alternatives. Like if you want to get a dopamine hit for your social needs, you can just pull out your phone, scroll through a couple stories on Instagram, and that's like your dopamine hit for your social needs. And you wouldn't, there's too much friction, it's too much effort, it's too much time to want to leave the house and plan something with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're almost helping in both of your ventures, providing almost like infrastructure for people to socialize. So I'm interested if you've always felt entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I think I've always been able to see opportunities and I want to make the most of them. If I don't see anyone else solving it, I will want to go and do it myself. But let's say I saw someone and they were doing exactly what I wanted to do with Ripple, but they were a little bit further ahead and they had more stability. I'd gladly join them. Because especially because I've been working for myself for the past 2 years now. I really value stability
Yeah,
and structure
for sure.
and having a manager and your manager having a manager
Yeah.
and you have subordinates and there's people to the side of you. So yeah, it's not that I ever wanted to specifically do something on my own, but it's just whenever I see something that interests me, if I can't find anyone else doing it, I'll want to do it myself.
I feel like that's very entrepreneurial.
Okay, well maybe I am.
And it's purpose driven, right? You're not doing it for the sake of doing it because you want to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people I think do like build a business because they want that title and like what they feel like the glamorization behind it or around it, which is like so far from the truth, as I'm sure you know. So yeah, I feel like that's very entrepreneurial of you.
Oh, well, maybe I am.
Okay, so to anybody listening who might want to start a business or go out on their own, what advice would you give them?
What advice would I give people who are wanting to start their own thing? I guess kind of like what we were saying beforehand, I do think it's really important to figure out if you genuinely have a passion for the thing that you are doing or if you're doing it just for the sake of wanting to have a business because you've glamorized it in your head. And I think there's another third small subsection where you might not be directly interested, but you see a clear like business opportunity. The first one and the last one, I think, are all good. But if you're doing it because you've seen Mark Zuckerberg or like some other founder who's like took them years and so much luck and so much work to get to where they are and think, oh, that's going to be easy. That's going to be me. You probably don't want to do that. So just try to figure out what your intentions are.
Yeah. I'm interested what you said about luck because I am such a big advocate, or like I guess I'm so vocal about the fact that like success, there is so much luck involved in like who becomes successful and who we never hear about. And I think a lot of founders, especially ones that have truly like made it, I think sometimes making it can sometimes like rot your brain a little bit, where you almost believe, well, I made it because I deserved it, because I was actually better than everyone else. You don't want it to feel like your success is diminished by, I guess, accepting that luck was a big role in that. How do you feel about luck?
Luck is the thing that tips over the scale. There's been so many clear examples of companies that were started, and they're pretty much exactly the same as a company that was started right after them, but they would fail. And if you get into the nitty gritty, it's because one thing that went right for the company that did succeed just happened to work out as opposed to the
Yeah.
first one. I think the people that I look up to, they're all very big on, we've obviously put in the hard work and we've like the skills and the time and all that kind of stuff, but luck was, we are not special.
Mhm.
It was luck to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. It's like, of course, you're not going to build something wildly successful without like so much hard work, so much sacrifice, all those things that are true, but there's always an element of luck. Like everybody has their own like version, right, of privilege and how that kind of translates into luck if they start their own business. So what's next for Ripple? Can you tell us anything about like your future plans, what you guys are hoping for?
Right now, we are just focusing on making our product really good, continuing to grow in Sydney. Our next city that we go to will probably be Melbourne. And then after that, probably somewhere in the States. We just want to make cities social.
Yeah, I love that. Congrats on everything.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It was great talking.
Well, that is everything from Mini Tech Scroll today. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview and the two stories we discussed. I will be back with a normal episode of Mini Tech next week, and Lauren will speak to you guys as normal tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Bye.